Well, good morning and welcome to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training. It's show number 193. It's Wednesday, the 1st of December, which makes it the first day of winter here in the Northern Hemisphere. So if you're watching from the Southern Hemisphere, enjoy your summer. What have we got for you today? Fairly short show today due to the fact that I'm feeling just a wee bit under the weather after my COVID booster yesterday lunchtime. So we'll look at Motorcycle Live, which is reopening at the NEC after COVID shutdowns, obviously. Devon bloodbikers have volunteers, but they need some funding to buy extra bikes. We'll have a quick look at Honda's latest NC 750X, a Marmite bike if ever there was one, which is getting a substantial for the bike power boost. A Royal Enfield 650 concept bike was just shown in the Milan show. And then today's discussion point are the latest tyres all they're cracked up to be. Some controversial views from me on that particular point. I'll be interested to get your feedback on that actually. So settle yourselves down for the next 30 odd minutes for today's show. Don't forget, if you have a comment or a question, I will try to get back to you during the show. If I can't make it live on air, I will come back to you at the end of the show. So anything you want to say, any comments, always interested to hear what you people out there want to talk about. Okay, first things first, just a quick reminder of tonight's Science of Being Seen presentation. It is going out at 8 o'clock tonight. The cost of a ticket is £5. And just to let you know what Howard said after attending one of the Bikerdome courses a couple of years back, which, as you probably know, it originated in Kent. I was one of the team which actually put Biker Down together, and that's where I produced the Science of Being Seen presentation. And what he said was, a couple of years later, actually, he sent me this. He said, for sure, the course was very good about what to do in the event of an accident, but you were the only person who was giving strategic advice on avoiding becoming a casualty. And he said that I had made a dispatch rider from 78 to 85 think outside of the box. It's all about avoiding those nasty accidents. So that's what the function of Science of Being Seen was as part of Biker Down. When Jim Sanderson and I first got involved in discussions about the pilot course, of which what would become the National Biker Down campaign, we both agreed that there was a need for a proactive crash prevention module. Now, managing the scene of the accident and treating casualties are clearly vital skills, but it would be much better if the rider attending the Biker Down course didn't actually end up in an accident, needing someone else to deliver those skills on his behalf. And so Science of Being Seen was born. And it was created over the winter of 2011-12, and as Biker Down was picked up by fire services right across the UK, the majority of those fire services actually ran a version of Science of Being Seen as their third module. Now, I delivered my final presentation for KFRS at Rochester in February 2020, just before we went into lockdown. And what's happened at the moment is that Biker Down was pretty much left alone by the top brass in the fire services. Individual fire services basically picked it up on a basis of running it in their own time on a voluntary basis, but it's finally been acknowledged as a national initiative. So the fire services have brought it all in-house, and that means they have decided to move on from my Science of Being Seen. So on the one hand, a fresh look can be a good thing. I certainly don't disagree with that. On the other, I am disappointed because I do believe that SOBS is a unique safety intervention in that it helps to give genuinely science-based advice to riders, and the idea is to help you all make better informed choices. I'm not telling you what to do, what you shouldn't do, whether I'm not saying you should be wearing bright clothing and riding with headlights on any more than I'm saying you shouldn't be. What I'm trying to do is make sure that you have the information to understand the consequences of what you do choose. And I do think it's a big shame that Science Being Seen is no longer being delivered in Biker Down to UK riders. However, I've put a lot of work into Science Being Seen, so I'm certainly not giving it up on it. I'm not leaving it on the shelf, and that's why I'm running these webcasts every 2 months. So as well as, of course, making myself available to clubs and groups for presentations, which I can do either online or in person, as we're now allowed to meet again, at least for the moment. So you can make a date to book online. I'll put the link up already. That'll take you to tonight's show. If you book by 6 o'clock, I can get the link out to you. Or the next one will be in 2 months' time. So if you have seen it, do let your riding buddies know about it. The presentation is recognised internationally. It's been showcased by Road Safety GB here in the UK. It's gone out on the Rev Talks series of webcasts out in the USA. And of course, you probably know that I've taken it personally to New Zealand twice in 2018 and 2019, and virtually to New Zealand for the 2021 Shiny Side Up tours. So that's it. Final call for tonight's Science of Being Seen. Right, okay, so what else is in the news? Well, the UK's biggest bike show, which is Motorcycle Live, is back at the NEC in Birmingham. The show opens to the public on Saturday and it runs till the following Sunday, December the 12th. So you've got the chance to watch it over 2 weekends as well as the weekdays in between. Now, the exhibits will be spread over no less than 4 exhibition halls. They will be showcasing bikes from no less than 55 manufacturers, and there'll be the usual entertainments and products to look out for. And there are opportunities to get on and ride in the test rider zone. Now, there are said to be a number of bikes which will be revealed to the world for the first time at this year's show, although there is no word on which they might be. But there will certainly be the first UK showing of bikes which have been released at other European shows earlier this autumn. And of course, as well as a traditional manufacturer, there are an increasing range of electric bikes and scooters to see. The Experience Adventure feature offers visitors the chance to get a taste for off-road riding. And they put together a sort of an obstacle course with some varied terrain, and you'll be able to do that under the supervision of trained instructors. There's usually a big queue for these events, so you probably have to get there early and sign up early. I don't think you can do it online. It's supported by Honda and Triumph and Royal Enfield. They are providing Himalayan. You get full protective gear from Bell and RST, and it's all free of charge. On top of that, there's also a Moto Trials experience, the Kiddie Moto Balance Bike experience, and the Youth MX experience. So sounds like lots of experience there. You've got a custom and classic zone. The National Motorcycle Museum is providing some Isle of Man TT winning bikes from 1903 right through to the present for that particular stand. If your liking is more towards the custom end of the market, there is a custom heroes section, and you'll be able to spot custom motorcycles from across the UK there, including the winners of this year's Backstreet Heroes Custom Bike Championship. If you're into the racing side of things, it's Saturday the 11th you'd probably want to go to. That's British Superbikes Day. Range of activities and guests on hand, including our reigning BSB champ, Taron McKenzie, and also riders Bradley Ray, Christian Idden, Luke Mossy, Tommy Hill, and many more are promised. You can also see Mackenzie's 2021 championship winning McCam's Yamaha. Suzuki will also be on showing all 7 of their World Championship winning machines. You probably recall that Johan Mir won the title this outgoing season. So his GSX RR will be there, and also Barry Sheen's 76 and 77 RG500s. So motorcyclelive.co.uk is the place to go for details. You'll also get COVID safety information there, and you are able to book tickets. Okay, so don't forget, if you want to catch this show, it's live on Wednesdays and Sundays at 11, almost always a live webcast. Very occasionally I have to do a recording for other reasons. And as of the last one, it was actually running 30 minutes late for other reasons. But anyway, normally 11 o'clock. And so just set a reminder to catch it on Facebook here. If you do miss it, you can see it here, of course, on Facebook, or you can pop over to my YouTube channel, Survival Skills UK, where all the old 11s shows are listed for you. Right, okay, so we've got one comment has popped up. If I can get the box to open. There we go. It's Nick saying, good morning. Hello, Nick. Good to hear you. Right, so to a worthy cause now, the bloodbikers, basically, as you probably know, blood bikes provide the NHS and other medical facilities with a free out-of-hours emergency courier service, and most of the couriers either use motorcycles or cars, occasionally vans. The important thing to understand is that these charities are actually run entirely by volunteers. They depend entirely on voluntary contributions, and nobody gets paid for the work they do, but they do clearly have expenses. Now, I performed the role as a blood biker for 4 or 5 years in the early 1990s, and it was basically when I got a job as a motorcycle trainer in 95. I really couldn't cope with the disrupted night's sleep. Sometimes I'd be called out at sort of 1 a.m. just after I got to bed, and I wouldn't get home till 5 a.m. From a run, and as I needed to be up again at sort of like 6:45 to get to work, it was really was a non-starter to try to train safely with a pair of novice riders. So unfortunately I had to give it up, but it always brings back fond memories, even if some of those rides were bloody awful, freezing cold nights out on the bike. One big advantage of being a blood biker for Southwest Blood Bikes, a charity, over doing it where I did it, which was in Kent, is that the weather is a bit warmer down there. You don't quite get the ice and snow and the frost that I experienced over the winters. So anyway, Southwest Blood Bikes have just taken over the hospital contract with North Devon District Hospital, which is after expanding into that area. Now, last year, the SWBB became the official nationwide association of blood bikes member for Devon. Each county has one group which holds that position, and their plan is to roll out their free service to all parts of Devon. Currently, they're based in Plymouth. They already have a presence in Tor Bay, and they have plans to move to serve Exeter and East Devon. But the expansion of their services depends on being able to raise the funds to expand on their range of bikes, cars, and vans. Over to Mark Bentley, who's their chairman, to explain their role. He says the name blood bikes is a misnomer. Although we do pick up blood and transport it to hospitals, the service has evolved over the years because we also deliver medical supplies, records, medicines, medical equipment, donor breast milk, or anything that is required urgently to improve the outcome for a patient or serve their life. Anything that needs moving urgently by the NHS will do it by bike, car, or van. During the pandemic, we have helped move COVID samples and deliver pharmacy prescriptions to people who are shielding or couldn't pick up their medication. We also do work for St. Luke's Hospice. We have grown very rapidly, in fact, far more than we would have liked to. We had planned to expand at a set rate, but that's rapidly accelerated because of the number of requests we are receiving from outside of those we're already serving. We're only scratching the surface of the work available to us. What's holding us back is funding. We receive no government funding. It's all done through fundraising. Now, right now, the charity does around 30 jobs a week. It operates 5 p.m. till 7 a.m. Monday to Friday, and 24 hours a day at weekends and on bank holidays. They've currently got 6 bikes, 2 cars, and a van, the latter which was apparently donated to them by a fellow group in London. And they have 31 volunteers, most of whom are riders. They actually have a waiting list of riders waiting to offer their services when the fleet expands. A new bike with all the added accessories costs around £11,000, says Mark. And the big problem is that not only have they got busier, but at the same time, their donations have fallen right off because they haven't been able to hold their fundraiser or charity events that they would normally have. And of course, when they do get out and collect money from people with their buckets, they have a big problem now because many people have stopped carrying cash with them. I have to admit, I have. I can't remember the last time I went to the bank and got money out. So that's heavily impacted on their ability to fund their expansion. So if you can't ride, why not dip your hand in your pocket and fund your local blood group? Right. Okay. So don't forget, if you have enjoyed the show, you can consider supporting me over at my coffee page, which the address is there on screen. You'll find 600 plus better biking articles available to read for the price of a coffee, £3. There are an increasing number of subscription articles on specialist topics for regular subscribers too, going up. And there's plenty of free stuff over there to read if you just want to do that. And I'm quite happy for you to just pop over and read my free Better Biking stuff. Have a dig around and you'll find plenty of free articles over there. But if you can support me, it all helps keep these shows on the road and keeps me writing. Right. Okay. So, thanking you in advance for your support. Let's have a quick look at Honda's NC series of bikes. Now, they are a real Marmite bike. People either seem to love the bikes or they hate them. What they don't seem to do is create any kind of middle ground in the way people approach them. And one possible reason for this is that they are the ultimate platform bike. Now, I've talked about platforms before. Essentially, you get a single chassis and a single engine, and you turn it into a range of very different machines. Now, currently from the NC platform, Honda have managed to produce the NC 750D Integra scooter and the X ADV, which is a sort of scooter crossover adventure model. It's got sort of knobbly tyres and is a bit more off-road oriented suspension, and it's a top seller in Europe. It's also the top stolen bike in the UK, I gather. You get the NC 750S, which is the naked, and the rather more popular NC 750X, which is again the sort of adventure model with a bit of bodywork added to it. And there were also a pair of naked cruisers, the CTX 700 and the CTX 700N, but they do seem to have been discontinued. I don't think they were stretched into the 750 range. And of course, on top of that, you also get the option for manual transmission or the semi-automatic gearbox with the DCT dual clutch system. So that should have set the scene for a long-running model, but what always surprises me is that Honda continually tweak these bikes. I really would have thought they would have left them alone, but hey ho. So I've ridden several of the different models. I rode the Naked and the X adventure style machine right back in 2012 when they were fresh on the scene, and I've ridden several others right up to the 2019 DCT model. Now I spent a day riding that fairly extensively around the canyons north of Los Angeles in early 2020, just in time for getting back before lockdown actually. The original half a Jazz car engine was a pretty low revving 700cc, and I have to say it had crazily low gearing. And I also have to say, and I hate to say it, it had too little power to haul around its rather solid mass. It was great fun on back roads, but it really did run out of puff on faster roads. I recall pulling out to overtake a truck on the moderately steep hill on the A20, which heads out from Folkestone towards the M20, and going nowhere fast when I twisted the throttle. And that was, sort of 65 miles per hour, where you really would expect a bike to be able to pick its skirts up and get on with it a little bit. The other thing I really disliked about the early DCT model, and to some extent even the manual, was the very, very low gearing. The DCT had a habit of changing gear just when you didn't want it to. For example, you'd be halfway through a sort of tight left turn or turning right out of a junction, and the thing would kick up a gear. Now, DCT is smooth, but it wasn't imperceptible, and that change did cause a little jerk. And it was a bit disconcerting if you weren't expecting it. It also had a habit of hanging onto a high gear when you really wanted some engine braking. Um, so there were ways around all these issues, but I did feel that the DCT model was actually compromised with that particular bike, and I didn't feel that the manual was particularly attractive either. So I gave the bike a miss. The 750 version added some power. It also added some revs, and it raised the very low gear ratios at the bottom end. And I have to say, by the time I got to ride the 2019 bike, it was a much, much nicer bike than the original. You can find the original review actually on my blog. So I was a little bit surprised, seeing as we're still in 2021, that it's barely, well, not even 2 years since I read, wrote about the last review, is that the new 2022 model is actually already in the lineup. So if I can get you the picture up on screen of the machine, give you an idea what it looks like. Hang on a minute. There it goes. What you'll probably notice is it looks pretty much like the last one. You'll be hard pressed, I would say, at a quick glance to spot the difference between a 2022 and the 2020 model. But there are some internal changes, and this is where things really improve. It gets a fairly significant power boost. It's up 4 horsepower. Now, you might say 4 horsepower is nothing very much in days when we regularly exposed to 200 horsepower motorcycles. But when you only had 54 horsepower to start with, a 4 horsepower jump is pretty substantial. It is around about 16 or 17%. It takes the power output to 58 horsepower, which again isn't too um, throaty, but when you think the original motor produced just 47 horsepower, I think it was 48 in the automatic, if I remember correctly, that is a fairly significant boost of power over the original motorcycle. Now, it also revs higher. I gather it goes up 500 RPM extra on top of the previously higher revving model I rode in 2020. And that's good news, because one of the things I really did notice on the early bike was that it ran out of revs, particularly in manual mode. You'd be accelerating and it would just stop dead on the rev limiter. So it wasn't really a relaxed ride, I didn't think, for a bike which had a low revving engine. It was because there was relatively limited power. You were up and down the gearbox all the time. Now, that did suit the DCT model, of course, because the auto transmission was doing all that for you. The DCT model, the latest 2022 version, incidentally, makes less power. It's A2 47 horsepower machine, and you can get the more powerful manual restricted if you want to. So second thing that's of interest is that the 2019 model I mentioned got higher low gear ratios, and I thought that made the bike a lot more rideable out of town. It meant you could hold intermediate gears a lot more easily. It was actually possible, combining that with the higher rev limit, just to sit in a couple of gears, which is how I like to ride in the middle of the rev range. But bizarrely, with the latest model, they're dropping the first 3 gear ratios again. Now, I don't understand that at all. The claim is that it will provide a sportier response, but frankly, it's not a sports bike, and a sportier response isn't really what we're looking for, I don't think. I suppose what it will do is it will make the urban crawl a bit easier. Another thing that is actually a big plus is that the machine's weight goes down. It loses 15 kilos again, which is a fairly significant drop, down to 214 kilos from 229 for the previous version. But add 10 kilos back again if you want a DCT dual clutch. So, with all those modifications, whether the engine really bears much resemblance internally to the half a jazz power plant that we were told about, it's hard to say. Apart from that, you get a mild restyle. You get new LED lights, which is a plus. One of the criticisms of the previous model was that the LED headlight, compared with the old halogen light, was actually hopeless. It gave very poor definition beam, and it wasn't very bright either. So virtually all riders of those bikes who ride them at night seem to have supplemented their headlight. And of course, being an LED, you can't change it. The whole shell, the whole lens has to be replaced. It's not just a case of popping a new bulb in. So there are downsides to LED lights as well as plus points. You get 4 riding modes: rain, standard, sport, and user. Personally, I have to say, I just left it in sport. It made a lot more sense. There's so little power, it's really not worth limiting it. Personally, unless I was stuck riding all day in jams at walking pace, when I would go for the DCT, it was lovely in the congestion actually in Los Angeles. If I were doing all my riding out of town, I would go for the manual. You'll get the extra power, but frankly, using the clutch isn't that big a chore when you're not changing gear too often. But DCT in town, yeah, it's a bonus. It really is a big bonus. 58 horsepower isn't much, but it will propel 2 riders and camping gear on a out of town holiday, just as long as you don't try riding at German autobahn speeds. Well, you will be disappointed. One other tip: don't use throw over panniers because the filler is under the rear seat. Prices £7,549 for the manual version, and you'll be adding well over £700. In fact, for the DCT, it's 8,289. So I'd rather fear these bikes have gone from being a sort of fairly budget purchase to a little bit of an expensive one. And there are rumours that there is a new 850 motor in the wings, which will replace the NC at some time in the not too distant future. Right, okay, so that's the Honda. I've got another motorcycle to show you now, and again, we've got a petrol engined bike. Been showing you a lot of electric motorcycles recently, but this is the Royal Enfield SG 650 concept. It's just been unveiled at this year's Exposizione Internazionale Motociclo e Accessori, which is what EICMA stands for. It's the Milan Motorcycle Show. I'd always wondered what the initials stood for, and now I know. The two-wheeler is said to strike a fine balance between looking forward to the future and staying true to the company's roots. We can certainly see the resemblance of the frame to some of the early Royal Enfields. The goal is to build a unique concept motorcycle that pays homage to Royal Enfield's rich history of custom motorcycles, but one that wasn't encumbered by the past. So basically, you've got the 650 twin motor, and it's wrapped in digital graphics. So it's all a one-off at the moment. You're not going to see this bike on the stands anytime in the near future. But I have a sneaking suspicion that with bikes like the Triumph Bobber being successful, I wouldn't be at all surprised that this one actually appears. Right, okay. We are coming towards the end of the show. Got one comment to read out. Robert says, why is tread depth some 4 mils deep? Well, that's an interesting question, actually. It's not something I'm going to talk about at the moment, but it's possibly something to come back to on another day. I'll just pop Robert's comment up so you can all read it. But anyway, to get rid of the picture there and bring me back on screen, hopefully a chance to read Robert's comments, and maybe somebody would like to talk about it. Um, I have to say, I can never get very excited by tyres. I mean, it's one of these topics where you get new tyre launches, they take you out to exotic destinations, go hurtling around mountains or around a racetrack. But quite honestly, I got my knee down on a Mark III Avon Roadrunner on a roundabout in Rickmansworth, and that was back in the early 1980s. So that was almost 40 years ago. And frankly, I've been struggling to see what new tyres deliver that those Roadrunners didn't, except accelerated wear and increased costs. Now, those Roadrunners used to do around 18,000 miles on my dispatch bikes. Now, okay, those bikes weren't particularly powerful, but even when I switched to the first bike I could fit radial tyres to, it was a 1990 GS 500 with 50 odd horsepower at the back wheel, I was getting a similar mileage from those Michelins. So I was still getting about 18,000 miles. And over the years, the range of the tyres has gone down and down and down and down without me being able to see any real benefits in terms of grip. Those Roadrunners were pretty good in the wet, they were pretty good in the dry. And so it's with a certain degree of skepticism that I read about the new Bridgestone Battle Axe Sport Touring tyres, the T32 and the T32 GT. I read that they offer excellent grip in all weather conditions, especially the wet, 10% more mileage than the outgoing T31 GT, a single compound in the front and a dual compound in the rear, a 13% larger contact patch on the rear tyre, increasing grip and feel, and 7% shorter wet braking distance. And then it concludes there's also greater dry grip and cornering stability and more linear handling characteristics. Well, let's just think about that for a moment. 13% larger contact patch? Really? Yes, there have been improvements in carcass design over the years, not least, of course, the switch from cross plies to radials. But if each iteration of tyres over the last 40 years could give you just a 5% larger contact patch every 3 or 4 years as the tyres were replaced, since my knee-down Avon Roadrunners, we'd be fitting tyres that were the width of a bicycle tyre, but somehow which swelled to tractor tyre proportions when we actually leaned over. The sums just don't add up. The same goes for the 7% shorter braking distance. That's a huge, huge improvement. And again, if that was repeated with every generation of new tyre, we'd be going backwards when we applied the brakes, not just stopping in a shorter distance. So what was the journo's response after having the new tyres fitted? To quote, acceleration and braking were more responsive and cornering was significantly more stable, secure and precise, especially in the wet. Remarkable, he says. Well, it's certainly remarkable that acceleration improved just by fitting a new tyre. And it's even more remarkable, frankly, that he could feel it through the seat of his pants. Just how good a rider does somebody have to be to feel the difference between different tyres? Well, to really assess those tyres, probably better than a lot of us. Being a tyre tester is a pretty skilled job. It's not a job they give to any Tom, Dick, and Harry. And I'm always reminded of a mega tyre test that was performed with the late David Jeffries. What they actually did was they took their tyres to a real road. They took them to the TT circuit, since he knew the circuit very well, and they sent him out on a lap of the circuit on a road bike with new tyres of a number of different brands, a dozen or so, if I remember correctly. Now, the tyres were fitted blind, so he couldn't see what rubber he was actually riding on. So the tyres were tested completely without prejudice by the rider. Now, the result was interesting because adding up all the criteria, which included everything from side grip under cornering through stability on the brakes to comfort over the bumps, he scored a pair of fairly unremarkable tyres by Continental equal top. Mind you, it didn't stop the journalists who wrote the story from voting the top brands like Bridgestone and Michelin to the top and putting the Contis down near the bottom of the table. But if you looked at David Jeffrey's own assessment of the tyres, the Bridgestones and the Michelins and were not as good as the Contis, which is really interesting, because Continental certainly isn't one of the brands that people first think about when they go out and buy tyres. Perhaps not surprisingly, my bikes are running on Continentals. Riders almost always rate new tyres as better than the ones they've just replaced. But again, think about why. How many of us actually do what was done in this tyre test? How many of us actually replace a brand new tyre with another brand new set? Or to put it another way, how many of us wear the tyres out and then buy another pair of worn out tyres to replace them? Of course, new tyres always feel better, and that really is what the tyre manufacturers actually rely on. Yeah, call me skeptical if you will. I'd be more interested to hear your thinking on what I've just talked about here. So anything else to say? Well, yeah, one other comment. If you are getting towards the end of life of your set of tires, or even if you're not, now is actually a good time to change them. Many riders will fit new tires for the spring and the summer, aided and abetted by the motorcycle magazines that tell them that, of course, that they need all that grip for their sunny weather riding. But in fact, you actually need your best grip on wet winter roads when the tires are cold, and frankly, in those conditions, tires that are part worn, particularly as they get towards the limits of tread depth, won't perform well. So get some new tires, get them bedded in properly, and you'll still be better equipped to face the cold, damp winter roads over the next 3 or 4 months. And if you've taken a pair of part ones off, we can put them back on for the spring. They won't be any worse than they were when you took them off, which is good news. And then you can wear them out on the nice dry roads. Last thing, thankfully, I'm sure you're saying, we are at the end of the show almost. Thank you very much if you supported my Black Friday deal. There are still a couple of the Tarmac Tactic books available to sell till midnight tonight. A few copies of that left. If you didn't get one, you can grab one if you want one. Don't forget, Science of Being Seen this evening. I've given you the link for that already, but do look in if you possibly can, or do spread the word to your riding buddies. Final thing, I am still running training courses. Now we are into December, but I am now down to a single training route from Northwest London, and I'll put some more details about that up on the Facebook page over the course of the day. So hope to see you for Science of Being Seen tonight. If I don't see you then, maybe you can make the next live webcast, which will be on filtering in January, first Wednesday in January. That's it for another show. Take it easy out there. It's just brightening up out there a little bit at the moment. Still quite mild today, but it looks like another cold one tomorrow, so watch out for frosts. So thanks for looking in. Stay shiny side up out there and enjoy your riding.